Thanks, Steve. And first of all, thanks to you and the CEF team for putting this event on. Katrina and myself have had a number of discussions going back many months now about the need to have a session like this, and it's long overdue. A number of factors were playing in our consideration of why this event is needed, and to be honest, I think it's needed across the NICS, not just these two departments. COVID, the last couple of years, has made working life incredibly difficult for all of us, but particularly the folks on this call and the nature of the jobs that we do. It usually requires a significant degree of interaction with each other, meeting up physically, having formal and informal conversations about what's going on, difficulties we're encountering, all in the sort of the public accountability and the governance space. And as I say, we've been struggling with the COVID working environment. We've been struggling with the lack of interaction with each other and learning from each other. And also during the last 2 years, we've had a number of colleagues who have been promoted into new roles in governance and accountability and dealing with public finance. And they haven't got the exposure, the awareness that we all took for granted before COVID. So we thought it was probably a good time to try and set up an event such as this. We have, as you know, had to be fleet of foot, shall we say, in the last 2 years, and a lot of the things that we do in the COVID intervention space. The normal rule books have in many ways been thrown out through the windows, and yet at the same time, we're still held, for example, to the standards that are set out in governance frameworks such as managing public money. And that's led to really difficult discussions, really difficult working environments. We've had to tread new ground in, for example, the interface with the Audit Office, our relationship with the Department of Finance, and how also we deal with ministers in the executive. You know, in my case, I think I've had more ministerial directions in the last 2 years than I ever saw in my previous 20 years when I was working in the Department of Finance. And it's a difficult space to be, and particularly, you know, we're still held to certain standards of accountability. And indeed, this week I'm up in front of the Public Accounts Committee on 2 reports. And also as an accounting officer, I still haven't had my accounts for last year signed off because of difficulties with the Audit Office, where let's just say we refuse to accept the position of the Audit Office on a number of issues. So as I say, those of you in this call will have been frustrated by the inability to get together as you normally would do before COVID came along and hit us all. So we think now is a perfect opportunity to walk through some of the key issues in terms of, you know, what's expected in terms of public accountability or governance or regulations, the support that accounting officers really rely on going forward, and also, you know, we're pushing the boundaries of normal concepts such as, for example, propriety or value for money or regularity. So it's useful to have this opportunity just to touch base on where we are and our understanding as accounting officers of what we're comfortable with and not comfortable with. I'm conscious I've cantered through an awful lot there. Katrina, if I summarise the sort of rationale for this morning?
Yeah, very much so, Mike. And just to add my thanks to yours, to everyone on the call. Neither of us could do our job, particularly the accounting officer element of our job, without you. I think for me, the key things, without repeating everything Mike has said, are those points around, you know, I think for a time we've taken for granted that somehow or other the rules governing public money and public expenditure are ingrained in everybody, without us actually having done something to make sure that's the case. So that's very much what we're about today. We are, as Mike says, in the most abnormal of circumstances, and yet all of the normal rules that the Assembly and the taxpayers expect are still in play, and that presents its own challenges. the responsibilities we carry as accounting officers, as many of you will know, are very personal responsibilities. So it is the one area the normal rubric is that we operate under the direction and control of the minister. This is the one area and the one position where special rules apply in certain circumstances. And that to me is always a reminder of the personal nature of those responsibilities. And just finally, Steve, from me, Mike talked about support. Support advice for me is really important. The more I can be confident that senior colleagues understand the rules of public expenditure, the more I have confidence that they'll be able to keep me right.
Sure.
But the one thing I would say, because I do hear it, not at SCS level, but further down the organisation at times, is the one thing I don't need is protection. I need advice, I need guidance, I need support. But, if decisions have to come to me for approval, I'll take them and I'll be accountable for them, and I'll manage the risk, and I'll make an assessment of the risk. So personally, I don't like the narrative around we must protect the accounting officer, because I think I'm paid well enough not to need that. But I most certainly do need advice, understanding of the rules, where they apply, where they can flex and should flex, where they can't, and the support to be able to account for whatever it is that my department does and spends. And that's very much, I think, Steve, what we're about today.
Yeah. No, thank you very much, Katrina, and thank you, Mike, for that very helpful summary, that context that you've articulated, and in a sense, that's the driver for today's session. And Katrina's right. I mean, it's just not possible to protect accounting officers 100% of the time, all of the time. So we need to minimize the risk, and we need to rely on those assurances, and that's why the team that we have here and your other colleagues play such an important part. And beyond the senior executives that we have here, it's our middle managers, our first line supervisors play a really critical role to help support Mike and Katrina as well. So listen, thank you very much for that, and we'll let you know how we get on today. We're having a kind of a feedback session, and we've got kind of structured evaluation that we'll get as well. So we'll let you know how it goes and how things can shape up for the future sessions as well. But in the meantime, thank you very much, Mike. Thank you, Katrina, for your input today.
Thanks, Steve. Good luck, everyone.
Yeah, good luck.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Katrina. So let me just take a few seconds, folks, just to share my screen. I do